We got a fun show today. We're going to talk about Dynasty leagues. I probably shouldn't say we have a fun show today because it implies other shows aren't fun, but this one's going to be interesting. We did a Dynasty draft last week. We'll talk about that. A lot of picks that are worth talking about. Devontae Adams was definitely not the number one wide receiver taken. Some debate about who should be number one. Lamar Jackson went way after the top two quarterbacks. Who was number two, you might be thinking. So all of that will be discussed. We have Dynasty emails and getting some news. Some important players being released. Tyrell Williams signed by the Lions. We'll get to some bigger headlines, I think, next week, but things are picking up. Adam Azer, Dave Richard, and Heath Cummings here on this Dynasty edition of Fantasy Football Today. And guys, I think we should just start with this. Who should be the number one pick in a startup Dynasty league? There are some parameters here. No rookies, it's not Superflex, and it's PPR. So Heath, who should be the number one pick in a PPR startup Dynasty league, not Superflex, and no rookies?
Well, it's Christian McCaffrey, and I think it's fairly obvious. I'm not even going to make a big case for him. I'll just apologize for showing up so late today and missing the first 45 minutes of the show. This is awesome. We're doing Dynasty like at the beginning of the show, an entire show about Dynasty. We're not saving it and pushing it for the last 15 minutes.
It's a Dynasty show.
This is awesome. Thank you, Adam.
Is it really that obvious that it's Christian McCaffrey?
To me, it is.
Okay. Dave?
I think it's obvious too. You think about the other players, certainly they're more likely running backs and wide receivers that you would consider taking at number one. Saquon's going to make you squeamish because of the injuries that he's had over the past couple of years. Derrick Henry is 27. Jonathan Taylor, maybe he's just not proven enough to earn that number one overall spot. Alvin Kamara, kind of the same age as Christian McCaffrey, and we know that McCaffrey's been a little bit more productive. So I get it. I think McCaffrey is the top pick, is the safest way to go.
Well, and I think the distinction you made about PPR is an important one, because I think you could make an argument for Jonathan Taylor in non-PPR. I think you could make an argument that the gap between McCaffrey and Taylor next year won't be that big. And after next year's the point where we probably start looking at discounting McCaffrey a little bit because of his age. And so in non-PPR, maybe you make the case for Taylor as the number one overall.
Can you make the case for Dalvin Cook? Or do the injuries scare you off there too?
He's even older than McCaffrey, isn't he?
Okay. I wasn't sure.
Let me break it down.
I'm sure he's close.
He is. So okay. Of the elite running backs, and tell me if I'm forgetting anyone, Saquon Barkley is 24. Now, okay, this is what age they will be in the 2021 season. Barkley will be in his age 20.
Week one is what I use generally.
That's what I use.
Pro Football. I use Pro Football Reference. So whatever they use, like looking at last year was Barkley's age 23 season. So he is going to be 24. I think he turned 24 in February. But that's what I'm using. Pro Football Reference has a way of doing it. This is your age blank season. That's what I used. Barkley will be entering his age 24 season. McCaffrey his age 25 season. Kamara and Cook 20 and Zeke 26, and Derrick Henry will be entering his age 27th season. He's the old guy. He'll be going into his sixth season along with Zeke. Kamara, McCaffrey, and Cook their fifth season, but McCaffrey's a year younger, at least in terms of what the metric I'm using. And then Kamara and Cook, and Barkley is the youngest. He's going into his fourth season. He's 24. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor and Swift and all those guys are younger. But I had a tough time coming up with a player to take other than McCaffrey because the rookie running backs, the ones who were rookies last year, they don't catch a ton of passes, right? Like if Jonathan Taylor's if there's going to be one guy, it's going to be him. He doesn't catch a ton of passes. And then if you want to go wide receiver, I had this thought, who is that guy, that player who's played 1 or 2 years in the NFL that you could make the case for as the number one pick in a startup Dynasty league? And unfortunately, the three wide receivers that everybody loves, Jefferson, Metcalf, A.J. Brown, they're not huge catch guys. They're like in the 80s so far in their career. And that hurts when especially compared to McCaffrey. So I actually thought maybe in a half PPR league, it's more justifiable to go with one of those wide receivers, if that makes sense. One of those three I mentioned, Jefferson, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. Over McCaffrey. But in a full PPR league, I feel like it's a bigger advantage to McCaffrey. So I don't know. It's like we don't, of these really young players especially at receiver, if you wanted to go receiver with your first pick, we don't have a guy right now that looks like a consistent 95 to 100, like a Julio Jones or an Antonio Brown or something like that. They're big play guys, and they so far have not been high catch guys. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think you can make the case that Jefferson could become one. I mean, he had 88 catches last year.
Yeah.
You're getting pretty close.
But he also was a big
there.
play guy. He was yards per catch way up there.
No doubt, but 88 catches is still 88 catches. And it was a good catch rate for him as well. He had 125 targets. I think he could get more next year. I think he absolutely could qualify as that high volume plus big play, like, a smashing playmaker in the NFL for a long time.
Yeah, and Julio Jones only had 79 catches in his second season in 16 full games, and then he became, catch machine. So that's something to keep in mind. Go ahead, Heath. Sorry.
Well, and the other thing they all have in common is like it's not that they haven't been huge catch guys because they can't earn target share. It's that, oddly enough, the three best young wide receivers all play on teams that want to throw the ball more than ever or run the ball more than average.
That's a great point.
That's unlikely to remain the case. I think we'll see more catches, targets for AJ Brown this year. I don't know about Jefferson. I think it'll be really interesting because for most of the year, you would have still said that Adam Thielen was the number one option on the Vikings. Now he wasn't late in the year for sure. I don't think there'll be any doubt going into next year who teams are going to try to stop in the passing game on the Vikings. It's going to be Justin Jefferson. And I wonder, like we saw that with Thielen and Diggs, where a lot of times it was just the guy that didn't get all the attention.
That's what Diggs told us.
Yeah. So it might be a little bit of a bounce back for Thielen in that regard, but like Brown is the one of that trio that I feel more confident we'll see more targets next year.
So now I'm pretty sure in the last 6 seasons, there's only been one wide receiver that's finished top 12 in PPR on an offense that was bottom 5 in pass attempts. I don't think it happened last year. And Jefferson was on a team that was 6th fewest in pass attempts. So he almost broke that mold. But
and you mean on a full season basis? Because AJ Brown was 7th on per game basis last year.
Okay, yes, on a full season basis. He didn't finish top 12, did he?
He was 17th because he only played
17.
I think 13 games.
Okay, so no, so yeah, I don't think it happened last year on any of the 5 teams that threw the fewest pass attempts. But Minnesota threw the 6th fewest, and Jefferson was obviously in the top 12. But it's hard to do. It's really hard to do to finish top 12 on an offense that doesn't throw the ball much.
They had 2 top 12 wide receivers on an offense that doesn't throw the ball very much.
It was top 12 both in overall fantasy points and fantasy points per game. A lot of that, though, had to do with Adam Thielen catching a lot of touchdowns because he had like 100-something targets. But he had more touchdown catches than Jefferson had targets inside the 10 last year. So that's an area that Jefferson can improve in too, is becoming a bigger target inside the 10-yard line. But even think about what has to happen for Minnesota to go back the other way and be, well, I mean, it's not so far the other way, but to be a run heavy offense. Defense has to get a lot better, and Dalvin Cook has to stay healthy. The offensive line has to stay strong. I'm not saying it can't happen. We've seen 2 years ago, we kind of saw it happen. But I still think there's plenty there for Justin Jefferson to be an impressive fantasy wide receiver.
But is there enough to make the case for him or any other wide receiver as the number 1 overall pick in a dynasty league?
The case for Jefferson to be the number 1 overall receiver in a dynasty league is he's just had a good volume rookie season. He's proven to be a great receiver. He's got room to grow in the red zone. We just talked about that. And he's only 21 years old. I that's not me saying I would take him for sure. I'm not sure who I would take first. Tyreek Hill is up there. Devontae Adams, I think, still deserves some consideration. And Brown and DK, I don't think I would take DK. But Brown would certainly be an option as well. There are a lot of good receivers that could go number 1. But Jefferson might have the most going for him because of age.
I think you can make an argument for Adams, for Brown, for Jefferson, for Metcalf, for Tyreek. It's not a huge gap between any of the really top 7. My thing is, like, on a per game basis, Davante Adams was so much better than everybody else, and really for the last 3 years has been so much better than everybody else on a per game basis. And I just like,
can you explain that?
Gamer.
Can you explain that? Because that obviously wasn't true in 2019.
No, not every single year, but if you look at 2020 and then you look at what he's done over the last 3 years on a 3-year average, it is true.
Is it really? He's that much better
last
than
year? I think
Hill?
He was 4 points per game better than Tyreek Hill, who was awesome. 4 points per game.
Yeah,
that's enormous.
Well, he had 18 touchdown catches. So we know that's coming.
Yes.
Yeah. We think that's coming down because Rodgers threw 48. Adams had just an insane amount of touchdown catches last year.
And in 2019, he was sixth in PPR points per game. No, but he was still sixth in PPR points per game.
And 2018, I think he was the best on 2018, he was number one on a per game basis. Now the 3-year average does not show because 2019 really holds that down. But 2 of the past 3 years, he has been the best wide receiver. And last year he was 4 points better than anybody and like 8 points per game better than guys like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf.
You're right about 2018, 21.6 PPR per game, a half point better per game than Antonio Brown that year.
But he's the same age as, but they're both he and DeAndre Hopkins are going into their age 29 seasons. Hopkins has been a top 5 wide receiver 5 times. I think 5 times. Yeah, that's incredible. At age 23, 25, 26, 27, and 28, he's been a top 5 wide receiver 5 times in his career. We don't even think about him as the potential number 1 wide receiver off the board. But he's not, but he's the same age as Davante Adams.
Right. I think he probably has, but like the last 3 years, he hasn't been close to as good as Adams was last year.
Not as good as he was last year, but you just talked about 2018 when Adams was the number 1 wide receiver per game. He was barely better than Hopkins.
By 1.1 points per game.
Was it that? I had it by about a half a point. I thought. I guess it depends on.
I'm looking at the FFT league. It's 21.97 to 20.84, but you're right. It could be different on a different site.
Yeah. Okay. I think I said he was number 2. He's actually number 3. 2018, Davante Adams, what I'm looking at on fftoday.com, 21.8 points. Antonio Brown, 21.6. DeAndre Hopkins, 21.1. Let's just call it he was a point worse per game. All right, fine. But my point stands. DeAndre Hopkins maybe should be part of this discussion too. Same age as Adams and 5 top 5 finishes. I couldn't believe that. Antonio Brown has 6 top 5 finishes, by the way, in his career. But
I think, the reason he's not is because at 28 years old, when you're comparing him to these 24 and 23 and even 22-year-olds, like the only way you get into that discussion is if we think there's a chance that you just blow those guys' doors off next year.
Is Davante Adams' chance really that much better than DeAndre Hopkins' chance?
I think he's a much better touchdown producer. Adams is, than Hopkins. And I also think there's a chance that Hopkins' target share could go down where we're not really seeing it. You look at the Cardinals offense and, he was their alpha on the outside and inside, but they could add a piece at some point during this offseason. I know they want to get their run game better.
The Packers absolutely could do the same.
They could, but I was going to say, but I think Rodgers just leans so heavily on Adams in the red zone that it might not matter. And teams know it's coming and there's nothing they can do about it. I can't say whether or not it's close between Rodgers to Adams in the red zone versus Kyler to Hopkins in the red zone. All I can tell you is that the Cardinals in the red zone have not been as great as we've hoped the past 2 seasons.
And it was close last year. Hopkins was at 160 targets. Adams was over that pace, over 10 per game, but not by a lot, like 10.5 per game in terms of targets. But that was on a team that threw the ball 526 times versus how many times Arizona threw it. Like relative to last year, I think it's more likely that Green Bay throws the ball more than Arizona.
Especially with running back changes potentially happening there. Here, just look at red zone targets last year. Devontae Adams had 28 of them.
Yeah, but Devontae Adams, I gave this stat a couple weeks ago, I think like a wacky stat. 44.4% of his team's targets inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah, I know. I want guys that have that type of
target
share.
I know. It's not going to happen again. A lot of things that happen for Devontae Adams are not going to happen again. That was an extremely high number.
Will he have more than 13 red zone targets?
He's going to catch more time. Okay, fine. I just wanted to put him in the discussion because Hopkins, I just think it's amazing. What I did yesterday in prep for this show was I looked at the last 10 years at running back and wide receiver, and I tried to find the ideal ages to answer this question of who should be going number one overall and who you should be prioritizing in a startup dynasty league, or if you're making a trade in an existing dynasty league or something like that. When does a player start to drop off? And what I found was age 26 appears to be a peak year at both running back and wide receiver. It had the most top 5 finishes at both positions. By age 28, you don't really want to invest heavily in running backs after age 28. You don't see a ton of top 5 finishes. You do see some top 12 finishes there, but they start to fall off once they get to 29. Wide receiver, they also start. Chris Towers also did some research on this. They also start to fall off at that age, but they last longer. They have better years after age 28 than running backs do. But for running backs, the most top 5 finishes were ages 24, 25, and 26. And it was a little bit older for wide receivers. It was 25, 26, 27. A little bit better. 25 to 28 really was the peak there. So basically, I just wanted to figure out how old is too old. Is Christian McCaffrey getting too old? No, not really. He's going into his age 25 season. He should have at least 3 really good years left, and he's such a sure thing. So that's why I said next year is the year I'll kind of start dropping him off a little bit, because when the 3-year window includes age 28 is when I start to get a little bit more nervous. But just one more thing on the Adams Hopkins discussion, because we're talking about how Adams is not going to score as many touchdowns next year, and he's not. But his 16 game pace over the last 5 years is 13 touchdowns per year. DeAndre Hopkins' career high he did once is 13 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I like Adams better. You're 100% right. The touchdowns are better. But I do think it's interesting that they're the same age, and Hopkins has been so consistent with 4 straight top 5 finishes.
You know, the conversation makes me think that Hopkins is like a great guy to target after everybody goes gaga over the first 4 or 5 receivers in a dynasty startup. And he might be he's a good target to trade for too, because there's this stigma that he's old and that maybe he just, had one great year with Kyler Murray. And you could always check in if you're close to getting a championship in your dynasty league to see what it'll cost to get him in a trade.
Well, let me go to this draft. Heath, you took Adams 8th. And
I took Adams 7th, I believe. Also, you've said many times that Hopkins and Adams are the same age. They are currently the same age. I have Hopkins as a year older because he'll be 29 when the season starts. He's about 200 days older than Devontae Adams. So that's again, like maybe it'll be their age 29 season for both of them next year. It's a good reason to use decimals when you're looking at age, because Hopkins is closer to a year older than Adams than he is to exactly the same age.
All right. They are going to both be in their age 29 season, but fair point. You took Adams 8th. Hopkins went 24th. So there's just a big, I think, difference in the way Hopkins is being viewed. And I guess to wrap up, I was trying to say about, how old is too old. Well, both of these guys are going to be 29. And that's when we're starting to see some drop off for wide receivers. Now, if they're truly elite, like Antonio Brown, like Julio Jones, you could get Reggie Wayne, I think, had a good year at like 34. These guys could be good into their 30s, really good. But it is a pretty compelling case to start thinking about. Maybe it's Tyreek Hill, or maybe it's A.J. Brown, or somebody like that, or Justin Jefferson.
That is
hard. What?
So weird that I'm sorry, I'm stuck on the age thing now. Devontae Adams is going to turn 29 on Christmas Eve.
Really?
Like week 16.
And they're making that his age 29 season?
No,
That
it shouldn't be that way.
that is the way that is done on Pro Football Reference. But I just want to say that, like, I don't think Adams. I look at it as he has his age 28, 29, and 30 season, and for a player his caliber, I don't expect a drop off in the next 3 years.
Okay, I mean, I think that's pretty fair. I would, yeah.
But I would look at him slightly differently. He wouldn't be number one probably if I had him in at 29.
So that's a big breaking point for you, that age.
That range, the 27 through 30 range, yes, is. There's big breaking points.
You also wouldn't see him the same way if he didn't have his current quarterback. And it looks like he's going to have Aaron Rodgers this year. Is he going to have Aaron Rodgers in his 29 season, in his 30 season? We think, we hope.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's dominating if it's Jordan Love.
One thing he can have beginning today is Paramount Plus. All right, it's launching today. Paramount Plus, you've probably seen the spots with Bill Cowher and James Corden and Patrick Stewart, Beavis and Butthead. Now you can hear it from me. It's live sports. I don't really belong in that group, by the way, not even with Beavis and Butthead. It's live sports. It's breaking news. It's a mountain of entertainment. Go straight from game day to movie night with Paramount Plus. Stream iconic movies like The Godfather, Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible. New episodes of critically acclaimed original series like Star Trek Picard, The Good Fight, and The Stand. And get this, you can also dive into live sports from CBS Sports. We got the NFL, March Madness, the Masters, Champions League Soccer. This is all in Paramount Plus. And hit shows from CBS, from Nickelodeon, MTV, BET, Smithsonian Channel, and Comedy Central. So it's live sports, it's breaking news, and a mountain of entertainment. Paramount Plus streaming starts today, March 4th. Let's take a quick break from our Dynasty discussions here and talk about the latest news around the NFL. The Giants released Golden Tate. The Vikings released Kyle Rudolph. Houston restructured David Johnson's contract. I guess we look at the two releases. Any major fantasy impact? I mean, obviously Herb Smith, but we were kind of banking on Kyle Rudolph not being there anyway. But Dave, fantasy impact of the Giants releasing Tate and Minnesota releasing Rudolph.
Yeah, my 2014 fantasy football team took a massive hit.
Well,
look, Rudolph's going to get a gig. There's already talk of him somehow going to Cleveland, and maybe he replaces David Njoku on the roster and reconnects with Kevin Stefanski there. I could see him going to New England and trying to, get an extra year or two out there as their kind of Gronk replacement. Rudolph is a giant out there. He just doesn't move as well as other tight ends. And that's what he wants to do. He wants to go somewhere where he's going to be able to be a factor in the passing game. So that's why he wanted out of Minnesota. Let's see what happens with him. He's got a chance to be a week one streaming tight end, a guy that you take with your late pick. There's all sorts of excitement for Irv Smith now. Totally get it. He's a top 12 tight end, of course. And I don't know where Golden Tate goes. I don't know if anybody really cares.
The only lots of people are saying the Kyle Rudolph to New England thing, and I would like to propose a rule that following this year, if whoever the tight end, the Patriots bring in to play tight end is irrelevant, as non-Gronk tight ends most generally have been with the Patriots, we can stop with the Patriots tight end thing and just say it was a Gronk thing.
Well, sure. I think we've been saying that all along anyway.
I don't think if Kyle Rudolph goes to New England,
Devin Asiasi in 2020 drafts.
Kyle Rudolph, no one's going to chase Kyle Rudolph though, right? I think some people will.
Only if he's got a good week one matchup would he be worth picking up. And that's no matter what team he goes to, unless he's like a backup.
Yeah.
Like if he goes to Kansas City, no one's drafting him, obviously. But if he goes to New England and the Patriots play, I don't know, name a team with a bad defense, the Lions.
Why though? I mean, who's the Patriots quarterback? I mean, Kyle Rudolph doesn't deserve
Trevor
to
Lawrence.
be.
They're going to trade to get Trevor Lawrence.
Kyle Rudolph is not a streamer. He doesn't deserve to be a streaming tight end, even in a great matchup.
It is a matchup based thing, and that's what he'll pretty much be all year.
When was the last time he was even that?
I think there might have been a week or two during the 2020 season where we were interested in Kyle Rudolph.
I mean, there's probably a week or two where you had a good game. I don't know that we were interested in him. He's a fantasy afterthought. He has been anyway.
That's why we're putting him in this possible streaming conversation.
Back to the actual relevant guy, Irv Smith.
Yes.
Scott Fish, our friend of the program, I had tweeted out my initial projection of Irv Smith, which is right around tight end 12. It was like 550 yards or something. It was really uninspiring, but I felt like I was maybe too low. And he had followed up and said last year, Smith and Rudolph combined for 58 catches, 699 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's really not very good.
No,
it is not. You'd think if Irv Smith has a good fantasy year, one of two things has to happen. He has to catch a decent amount of touchdowns, or Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen have to fall off. Right?
Or Dalvin Cook falls off.
Well, let's not say that. Kirk Cousins did throw like 36 times per game down the stretch. I think it was the last 8 games of the year. So that helps. And he caught 3 touchdowns. Irv Smith caught 3 touchdowns in 4 games without Kyle Rudolph. And he played a lot. He played about 80% of the snaps in 3 of those 4 games.
4 touchdowns inside the 10, too.
The Saints cut Jared Cook. So what do you think about Taysom Hill catching passes at tight end from Jameis Winston? Then we could really make him a tight end.
Don't try and take the shine away from Adam Troutman.
That's true.
That's going to be the guy in New Orleans.
I think he was taking the shine away from Taysom Hill.
I just want him to be tight end eligible. That was a really fun week. Remember that?
It was wild. That was fun.
Houston restructured David Johnson's contract. He was good.
Super duper great value in best ball drafts right now. Both places we looked, he was running back 33 in terms of ADP at running back right now. Go get him at that cost.
Wow. The Raiders.
Where do you have him ranked, Heath?
Projected like 16th, and I think I dropped him down to like 22 or 23 because of all the uncertainty.
Right. That's the range that he's in. He's going to be one of those last gasp RB2s.
Raiders GM Mike Mayock endorsed Derek Carr. Really threw a nice statement of support at him. And Carr, this is something that's easy to forget. He averaged 316 yards per game in his last 6 healthy games. That's a plus 5,000 yard pace. He had that one game where he left with the injury very early. But yeah, I mean, he scored 27-0. Remember the game at Atlanta? We were so excited about the Raiders. They had a horrible game. 27 points, 0 points, 37, 27, 25, and 24 fantasy points in his last 6 games, 6 healthy games in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. He did have 3 rushing touchdowns that helped, but also was throwing on a 5,000 yard pace. I don't know. Where do you guys have Derek Carr? Is he inside your top 15?
No.
20?
Close.
Top 20 guy?
I have him 18th.
Okay. I for sure have him inside my top 20. I have him 18th.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're drafting him unless he's got a really great week 1 matchup and you've decided to stream quarterbacks, or in your 2 quarterback league and you want to have a really good second quarterback.
Yeah. Most leagues draft 2 quarterbacks though, right?
Like start 2 quarterbacks or
not
drafts?
Ours.
Yeah.
Most leagues draft 2 of them.
Sure. So he would be one of those second quarterbacks.
Okay, Minnesota GM Rick Spielman, he endorsed Kirk Cousins. He said Kirk Cousins is our starting quarterback. Detroit signed Tyrell Williams. It's a 1-year deal, $6.2 million. He missed all of 2020 with a torn labrum. He had 3 straight very consistent seasons of 41 to 43 catches, 651 to 728 yards, 4 to 6 touchdowns before missing all of 2020. Tyrell Williams, guys, is he a top 48 wide receiver?
He is not for me.
If the Lions don't franchise Kenny Golladay or bring back Marvin Jones, then he would be a top 48 wide receiver for me. I think the 2 relevant seasons in that case would be 2019 with the Raiders and 2016 with the Chargers, because those would be the 2 years where he had an opportunity to be the number 1 in terms of target share. And he was like one of those years, he was a number 2 wide receiver. One of them was a number 4. So he's probably a number 4.
All right. Some more news. The Jets released defensive end Henry Anderson. The Dolphins are releasing Kyle Van Noy, a linebacker that they signed last year. Pittsburgh unlikely to resign James Conner, according to ESPN's Brooke Pryor. And we're seeing some rumors Aaron Jones could get franchise tagged. Allen Robinson could get franchise tagged. It's very vague. Doesn't necessarily mean much. We'll see what happens.
Next week's going to be a pretty big week. Next week and Yeah, the week after that, the new season starts.
You know what I'm going to be doing next week, Dave?
What's that, Adam?
Starting this weekend, really, I'm going to be full court press preparing for fantasy baseball drafts because it is time.
Me too.
Yes, and there's a great new tool for you if you just don't have the time. Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Guess how long each episode is? Yes, 5, maybe 6 minutes. Every day, first thing in the morning, download Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Check it out. Great information. And also go to our website, go to cbssports.com/fantasy. There is so much great fantasy baseball and football, and basketball, but fantasy baseball content. That's what we're talking about right now. It's a great way to get ready for the season. Okay, some dynasty topics. Devontae Adams was was he the 4th or the 5th wide receiver off the board? I'm sorry. He was 4th, right? So here's how round 1 went. McCaffrey, Barkley, Cook, A.J. Brown, Kamara, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf. Those are the first 9 picks. It had 5 wide receivers and McCaffrey, Barkley, Cook, and Kamara at running back. Travis Kelce was 10. We got to talk about that. Patrick Mahomes, 11, and Jonathan Taylor, 12. Heath had the 8th pick. He took Adams. I had the 9th pick. I took Metcalf. Dave had the 12th pick. He took Taylor. But Heath, you had Travis Kelce going 10th overall, George Kittle going 14th overall, and Waller was well behind them. Waller was 53rd, and Andrews was 56th.
Crazy.
So Heath, you've got the dynasty rankings. Everybody can check those out on the website. How do you rank those top 4 tight ends? In the draft, they went Kelce and Kittle as top 14 picks. Then in round 5, Waller and Andrews.
Yeah, I like at tight end, I would rank them Kittle, Andrews, Waller, Kelce. As far as where they went in this draft, I love where Andrews and Waller went. I would not take. I don't think I'd take Kittle where he went either. I think both of the top 2 tight ends went earlier than I would prefer, and the next 2 were better.
Okay, so you have Kelce as your number 4 tight end in Dynasty.
I do.
Dave, what about you? How do you rank those 4 in Startup Dynasty?
I think putting Kittle first makes a lot of sense because of the age factor. And I still think he's got potential to have a couple of big touchdown seasons. We haven't seen that from Kittle yet. I go back and forth with Waller and Kelce at 2 because I know that Waller is up there in age, but he should theoretically last a little longer than Kelce. The thing about Kelce is that you might get 2 really great seasons out of him before he starts to slow down. It doesn't look like he's slowing down at all, and he's just in a phenomenal offense. So I think if I wanted to play it safe, it's Kelce. If I really wanted to take a little bit more of a long-term approach to my Dynasty League, I would go Waller. Andrews is 4th.
Heath, I wonder when the next person in their 30s was drafted, because Kelce's going into his age 32 season. You have better age numbers than I do, so maybe you can correct me, but he'll be 32 in 2021.
He'll be 31 at the start of the season.
Okay.
But yes, he will turn 32 at some point during the season. I'm trying to see who my next highest ranked player in the trade chart is, or in the top
Jones,
150.
Maybe
What's that?
Julio Jones, maybe.
That's probably a great
Boy.
guess.
If that's the case, I don't believe Julio's in my tops. I'm still scrolling, and I'm at 75.
Oh, I took Julio Jones 57th overall in this draft, right after Mark Andrews. But
yeah.
That's quite first round for Travis Kelce. Buyer beware, I guess, because he's getting up there in age.
I actually have Russell Wilson ahead of Julio Jones.
Okay.
But age 32 for Russell Wilson doesn't really mean very much.
Right.
Age 32 for Julio Jones might mean that you've got 1 or 2 years left.
Mm-hmm. Wilson went in round 8. Jones went in round 5.
How many more years do we have of Kelce playing like this? I'm thinking 2.
The thing is, like that's a fair guess. Playing like he did last year, I think the best bet would be 0. I would say the best bet is that last year was the best year of his career.
Yeah. Want to compare him to Tony Gonzalez?
If you've got that info available, hit me.
Well, let me see what Tony Gonzalez's actual birthday is. Okay, February. So this works perfectly. His age 31 season, nearly 1,200 yards, 99 catches, 5 touchdowns. His age 32 season, 1,058 yards on 96 catches, 10 touchdowns. Monster years in 2007 and 2008. He started to decline after that, but it's also coinciding with him going to Atlanta. His first year on Atlanta was his age 33 season, still had 83 catches, 867 yards, 6 touchdowns. Basically, the rest of his career, he was around 800 to 900 yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns. He had 1 year where he only had 656 yards. But he never reached the yardage marks that he had in Kansas City when he went to Atlanta. Is that because he got old? I don't know. But at age 37, he had 859 yards and 8 touchdowns. Age 36, 930 yards and 8 touchdowns. I mean, that's a top 5 tight end in any year. That might be like a top 3 tight end most years. So that was when he's 36 and 37.
It's a matter of how long he can hold on to that role and keep the coach's confidence. And you look at his contract, he's not even going to be a consideration to get cut until maybe 2023. When the Chiefs can save over $13 million off the cap. So I think the Chiefs are banking on 2 more years of Kelce. I mean, they can keep him at this rate, and he'll be a bargain at that point if he's still playing well at a high level when he's 34 years old. So I think that's the safe play with Kelce. And there's evidence with Antonio Gates. Gates' numbers weren't necessarily amazing. They were still certainly top 10, maybe even top 5 fantasy tight end numbers when he was playing into his 30s. Some years he was much higher than that because he scored a lot of touchdowns. So I think that it's just the role that he's got, the athleticism he has, the amount of targets that he gets. I don't see it slowing down this year or next year for Kelce.
I think an interesting question is Kelce and Devontae Adams. Kelce's obviously older. There's a lot more competition at wide receiver, though. For that number 1. Adams was 4 points better than everybody else last year at wide receiver. Kelce was 3 points better than everybody else at tight end last year. Who's more likely to be number 1 this year?
At their position, Kelce.
Yep.
Let me ask you another question about
Why is that, though?
Why?
There's
because
much more
there isn't as much competition
Yeah.
for that mantle at tight end.
The competition that there is, like Kittle was as good as him 2 years ago per
He
game.
was. Yeah.
We've seen Waller be almost as good as him per game.
Right. I think it's like an odds thing, Heath, where what percentage chance would you give Kelce of being the number 1 tight end in 2021? 25%, 30%, 50%? It's going to be a high number. And with Adams, I'm not sure if you can say that because of all the other great receivers that are out there.
Yeah, I'd probably say 30 on Kelce.
Fine, but can you say 30 on Adams? Maybe close to 30.
I don't know. I mean, it's also dependent on injury and stuff too. And Adams has had more injuries lately. I don't know. With the age difference, who I'd say is more likely to get hurt.
Like that's baked into the 30%.
Let me ask you this. So Kelce has basically played 7 full seasons. He's got kind of a late start, and he didn't play his rookie season. So at the same age, Tony Gonzalez had played 11 seasons. So Kelce doesn't have the same type of mileage that you might expect at his age, and I think that also applies to Derrick Henry, in my personal opinion, because while he has like 700 carries in his last 2 seasons almost, he didn't really get that much work in his first 3 seasons. 110 carries, 176, 215.
Yeah, there's research that I've done that proves that it's not necessarily an age thing as much as it is a workload thing.
Right, and which is weird for Henry because you're terrified of 373 or whatever it was regular season carries.
The number was 370. The truth
378.
is that he's had over 400 touches each of the past 2 seasons.
Right.
And those who were worried about him going into last year, they looked at, I think it was 409 touches that he had in the regular season of the playoffs. And they said, there's no way that a normal human can hold up to that. To which other people, the people who liked Henry, would say he's not a normal human. And now I think everybody's kind of shrugging their shoulders and saying, okay, he's not normal. He's had over 800 touches the past 2 seasons. You've got to trust that he can stay upright and strong for another year.
Yeah, and maybe he's Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson has had a top 5 finish at age 31 or something like that. Age 30 in 2015. LaShawn McCoy was really good, late in his career.
One thing that I think about, and this is just off the top of my head, how many times did we see Derrick Henry take a hit and we go, wow, he got pummeled on that tackle, versus the amount of times that we see Derrick Henry stiff arm somebody or, drag a defender or push a pile. Like, I think he's the one dishing out the punishment. And I think that helps him. And again, off the top of my head, no evidence behind this, just a thought. That's what makes him almost more appealing to fly into the face of, the curse of 370 or the 400 touch thing, because he's the one dishing it out, not taking it.
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't hobble off the field as many times as Dalvin Cook does, which is like once a game.
He's a bigger, stronger dude.
So what's a better value? Derrick Henry in round 2, specific, like mid round 2, 6th pick of round 2, or Austin Ekeler with the 5th pick of round 3. I mean, he's in his prime, So who's a better value, Henry in mid round 2 or Ekeler mid round 3? And this is a full PPR league.
I would take Ekeler over. No, I wouldn't. It's very close. Eckler's a better value.
Do you trust Henry to stay upright? You can't count on him to get a lot of catches. And can you trust Austin Ekeler to stay upright and have him continue to get a lot of catches? Remember, they're changing coaching staffs. We think that Austin Ekeler is going to remain in a very strong role where he's going to get a lot of receptions, but he doesn't get a lot of touchdowns, doesn't work near the goal line very much. He's fumbled down near the goal line, I think, once each of the past 2 seasons. That could stick with the coaches that are there. And that offense, I think it's going to revolve a lot more about Herbert than it will be about anybody in the run game there. I think I'm going to land on Henry over Ekeler.
Overall, but what if you could wait around and get Ekeler?
If I can wait around to get Ekeler, and I know I can wait around to get him, then I will probably wait to get Ekeler if it's full PPR.
How about this group of running backs in round 3? Aaron Jones going 27. So starting with the 27th pick. Aaron Jones, Cam Akers, Austin Ekeler, Miles Sanders. Jones, Akers, Ekeler, Sanders. Then you have McLaurin. Then James Robinson, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson. So that's, a lot of really interesting running backs in that round. Aaron Jones, Akers, Ekeler, Miles Sanders, James Robinson, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson. Heath, what do you make of that with those running backs going in round 3?
Most of those backs I've got ranked between like 23 and 28. So that's right about where I think they should go. I do think it's very good value on Miles Sanders. I still, and I may not be factoring in enough risk for Jacksonville doing something different. I think that's very, very good value for James Robinson, but it's possible that they decide to spend resources on a running back, I suppose. Mm-hmm. That is a risk.
Okay. So what stood out to you, Heath, in this draft? We're going to get to emails in a few minutes, but what some of the major takeaways?
Well, I think one of the things that will stick out to people was probably Dan Schneier taking Patrick Mahomes in the first round at number 11. And they might even expect us to say, don't take a quarterback in the first round. I have in Dynasty Mahomes ranked as a first round value. So I think that was a good pick. I thought it was interesting what you brought up about Lamar Jackson and how far he fell below Josh Allen.
Yes,
as the number 3 quarterback.
Josh Allen was the 22nd pick, and Lamar Jackson was the next quarterback taken. What did I say? He went in round 6, was it?
I took him in round 4.
I'm sorry, round 4. Okay.
And it could just be that Tom Fornelli took Josh Allen, and those may have been the 2 people who were willing to draft a quarterback in the first 3 rounds, and that's why there was a big gap there. Mm-hmm. But I do think quarterbacks should go earlier, in my opinion, in dynasty drafts than they do in redraft. because young quarterbacks might be studs for 10 years on your roster. And you're not going to draft a running back or a receiver or a tight end that's going to do that. Probably.
I was absolutely expecting Deshaun and Kyler to go sooner and Lamar Jackson to go sooner than they did in our Dynasty mock.
Okay. I felt like running back was pretty good through 3 rounds. And then after that, really dried up. Like if I took Josh Jacobs in round 2. I think I went Metcalf, Jacobs. I had the 9th pick. Metcalf, Jacobs, Mixon. And I was pretty happy with that, but not thrilled. And then I did take David Johnson later in the draft, but Keyshawn Vaughn is on my team. Those are my 4 running backs. Oh, and Rashad Penny. So my running backs really sucked. Overall,
there were some running backs that fell further than I think they should have. AJ Dillon in the middle of round 5.
Yes. Great pick.
Damian Harris in the middle of round 6. I think actually Jacob Gibbs picked both of those. But those were good values. And then you get to that range in the round 6, round 7, where there's the guys like Chris Carson and Kenyon Drake and Myles Gaskin, who could either be top 15 running backs next year or could be on the waiver wire by the middle of the season.
Yeah. And David Johnson, I took round 9. So I was happy about that.
That was a great value.
Yeah. But a lot of these running backs, it's an interesting time to do a dynasty draft, right? We haven't had free agency. We haven't had the NFL draft.
Right. I was about to ask, when's the best time to do a dynasty startup?
It depends on if you want to include the rookie draft. I think we had this question a couple weeks ago on the show, and I think I said the same thing. It depends on if you want to do the rookie draft as part of the startup or not. Because if you want to include the rookies in the startup, then I wouldn't do it until after the NFL draft.
Right.
If you don't, then I'm fine with doing it in February.
But why?
Before
why not?
Free agency?
Why not? I mean, it's fun to do drafts, but
right.
Why not just wait until after free agency and the NFL draft? And
right. Do it 2 weeks before the NFL draft. And then you can
still do and then at that point you can do do it in July or whatever. At that point you can do however you want. You can do a startup dynasty draft that includes rookies, or you can do a startup dynasty draft that's just veterans and then do a separate rookie draft. However you want to do it as a league. But it's just so many players, their values are going to change over the next few weeks and months.
I think people like doing that because there's less information available to everyone. Mm-hmm. And so you are more likely to get, like, maybe there's somebody who really thinks that KJ Hamler or Gabriel Davis or Michael P. Ryan or some of those young guys are actually going to get the opportunity and make the big step forward next year. And they're available in round 11. And it might be in May or June that it looks a little bit more obvious that those things are going to happen, and they aren't near as cheap.
And we will take a break and read some emails in a moment. I just wanted to give you some Twitter poll results going all the way back to the conversation that started the show. Who should be the number 1 pick in a startup dynasty draft? PPR, not Superflex. Christian McCaffrey got 52%. A different running back got 16%. A wide receiver, 10%, and Patrick Mahomes, 21.4%, second place on this list.
I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of normal. And I love the idea of getting him with a late first round pick and then coming back. This is what Dan did in our draft. He got George Kittle in round 2, shored up 2 positions with his first 2 picks.
Well, let's look at his team then. And let's see.
Well, all right then.
The rest of his didn't work out for Dan, who's got Mahomes and Kittle, and he's probably going to get the number 1 pick in the draft next year, in the rookie draft, because he has Tony Pollard, Chase Edmonds, Le'Veon Bell, Matt Breida, Darrell Henderson, Phillip Lindsay, Marlon Mack, Jerick McKinnon at running back, and he has Keenan Allen, Kenny Golladay, Adam Thielen, and Michael Gallup, and Brashad Perryman at wide receiver. And DJ Chark, sorry, is a flex for him.
He's loaded everywhere except running back, at which point he is pretty thin.
Is he loaded? Is this loaded at wide receiver?
I think it's a great start at wide receiver.
Keenan Allen,
Golladay, and Thielen,
and Chark.
Plus DJ Chark. There's plenty of upside to help win now. And
It's a
little bit
win
to help
now
you win
receiving
later.
core.
Yeah, but why have a win now receiving core when you're running back? It's like either go all in or.
Well, there's still a rookie draft that's coming that he could add a running back or two there. And you know that there's always going to be a few running backs that come out of the woodwork off the waiver wire. He's just going to have to be aggressive about going to get them.
Should we go through our teams real quick?
Yeah, sure. But let me ask you this. A lot of people do startup dynasty drafts, not a lot, but maybe there's one or two in each league. They kind of punt on year one and they try to establish some incredible future team. So if you know that you've taken Mahomes and Kittle with your first two picks, and then in round 3, you took Kenny Golladay after that run of running backs, which was unfortunate for him. Jones, Akers, Ekeler, Sanders, Robinson, Mixon, Gibson, all off the board right before Dan's next pick. He could have taken Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but he went with Golladay, and then he took Keenan Allen. Does it make more sense instead of Golladay and Allen, not that they're old, but to go even younger at wide receiver? Like take DJ Moore?
I would have. What I was going to say was he should have taken David Johnson.
Oh, late in the draft.
Yeah. When he should have taken Melvin Gordon or the guys that are probably going to be starters next year, but are being discounted because of their age.
Heath, let's see your team. You had the 8th pick. What do you got?
I have Lamar Jackson at quarterback. My starting running backs are DeAndre Swift and James Robinson. My wide receivers are Devontae Adams, Tyler Lockett, and Marquise Brown. I have Mark Andrews at tight end. Currently have Laviska Shenault as my flex. The bench is interesting. I think Carr's my backup quarterback, whatever. Running backs, I have DJ Dallas, Michael P. Ryan, Devin Singletary, and Ito Smith. Wide receivers, I have Colin Johnson, Sterling Shepard, and Travis Fulgham. Try to get a little mix of upside and security there. And then I have both Austin Hooper and OJ Howard.
Do you think you have any really usable backup running backs in DJ Dallas, LaMichael P. Ryan, Devin Singletary, and Ito Smith?
I hope so. That's those are the types of guys, though, that I want to take a shot on. Like there's really 4 guys whose teams might go add superstar running backs. But if one of those 4 don't, there's 4 guys that could have an opportunity at legitimate touches in 2021.
Okay, I had the 9th pick. I just have I have a weird team. Aaron Rodgers, Josh Jacobs, and Joe Mixon. I mean, that's the fate of my team right there. They're young Jacobs especially. Still got some good years left, those two, but disappointing in 2020. Julio Jones, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Julio Jones. Those are my starting wide receivers, plus Michael Pittman as my flex, and I have TJ Hawkinson at tight end. Yeah, it's solid. It's the middle of the pack.
It's got a lot of similarities to my team, actually.
It's weird. You have Swift and Robinson. I have Jacobs and Mixon. So I have a little bit more provenness, I guess. You have more. I don't even know if you have more upside, but you're younger. Dave, whose running backs would you prefer, Jacobs and Mixon or James Robinson and Swift?
That's a great question. I like them both. I think I would go with Jacobs and Mixon.
I think I have 1 and 4 in that group, and you have 2 and 3 in most people's minds.
Probably. I don't know. I think people really like Josh Jacobs still.
Well, you can't fight the age there, but it's not like DeAndre Swift is some old coot in his scooter.
Right.
So I think that I think it's close between those two. I think Mixon's third, and despite what we saw from Robinson, I think there's trepidation about him being able to keep doing what he did last year for years to come.
It is, again, and this is just different people looking at, like, obviously the pedigree with Joe Mixon is much better than it is with James Robinson. Joe Mixon's been a future star at running back for like half a decade now. James Robinson in his rookie year just had a season as good or better as Joe Mixon ever has.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years younger, and we were pretty confident in Joe Mixon moving forward. We're not sure about James Robinson.
Well, I don't know if we're that confident about Joe Mixon moving forward, but we know that there's big opportunity for him. We think there could be big opportunity for James Robinson.
I'm confident in touches.
We have absolutely no idea what Urban Meyer thinks of James Robinson.
I'm confident in Joe Mixon's touches. That's That's why I would take him over Robinson at this point.
I'll tell you what, though, like if the draft goes by and free agency finishes up and Jacksonville doesn't do anything significant at running back, they've told you what they think of James Robinson.
Yeah.
And there have been running backs in Urban Meyer's offenses before that have been just amazing, statistically outstanding. And it's college, it's not pro, but the opportunities are there. That's the point. And there are opportunities to catch as well. And we've seen Robinson do that. So we're going to have a better grip on Robinson in about 3 months.
Yeah.
Yes. And to be clear, like I said, I have 1 and 4 and Adam has 2 and 3. I think that's in most people's minds. I would prefer Robinson to Mixon, but I've always kind of been the poo-pooer of Joe Mixon.
You have Swift and Robinson. I have Jacobs and Mixon. Who do you think number 1 in most people's minds is? Swift?
I believe so, yes.
That's it.
You know, what's funny though is that Robinson and Swift are going to be the first 2 drafted in redraft this year. No question about it.
Who?
Robinson and Swift.
I really think that people could forgive Josh Jacobs' season, because what we know about Jacobs is that he's going to get a ton of touches. He's going to dominate at the goal line. We think we know about that. He won't have the catches, 30 catches, something like that, but maybe 35, maybe more, but not 50. I don't know. I mean, the Raiders' offensive line was really banged up last year. I could see people getting back on the Josh Jacobs train like they were last year. I could see that. All right. Anyway,
there will be a fever pitch for Swift for sure.
I just looked, and it's fantasy football calculator, so I don't know. But DeAndre Swift is 18th and Josh Jacobs is 25th.
Okay. Where's
James Robinson is 32nd and Joe Mixon is 33rd.
This is for what? That's ADP so far?
Dynasty average draft position.
There we go.
Oh, well, Dynasty's different because
but that's what we're talking about.
No, you said in redraft that
I made the point in redraft. Yes.
Right. What I'm saying is in redraft, I think he could end up being the first of this group to go. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it almost doesn't matter because my running backs are better than both of yours. My duo is better than your duo.
Maybe. I mean, you've got the passing downs guy for the Chiefs. Clyde Edwards.
Actually, he was the running downs guy for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I know, but now that's going to be Damian Williams. All right, you've got Russell Wilson. Well, you can give your team. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got Wilson at quarterback. I got good value on him. Running back, Jonathan Taylor was my first-round pick. Edwards-Helaire was my third-round pick. Calvin Ridley was my second-round pick at receiver. T. Higgins was my fourth-round pick at receiver. And I had back-to-back picks. I was the last pick in round 1. I was in the 12 slot. Put Will Fuller with those guys. Put Robert Woods with those guys. Tight end is Jonnu, hoping that he ends up in a great spot in free agency this offseason. And then the bench, nothing great. At running back, it's Tariq Cohen, Josh Kelly, Jeff Wilson, Bryce Love, Anthony McFarland. I was actually happy to get McFarland, especially now with the news about Connor being on the outs in Pittsburgh. He's got a shot to get a good role there. Wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders, Julian Edelman, Quintez Cephas. And that's it at receiver. I'm definitely thin at receiver depth, but I like the guys that I have in my lineup.
Yeah, I think you have a really good team. In fact, I think your bench running backs, just having Tariq Cohen and Jeff Wilson, that's nice.
Yeah, and I have Robert Tonyan, too. I got Tonyan late in the draft. So if Jonnu doesn't end up in a great spot, I can just go to Tonyan. Hopefully he can keep it going from last year.
Cool. Okay, well, it's long overdue, and we have to read your Dynasty email, so we're going to have a longer show today. We're going to take a quick break here on Fantasy Football today. When we come back, your emails, fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Our first email is from Nicholas. 14-team Dynasty startup, full PPR, 1 quarterback. I just traded my 3-14 and 401 and 5-14 picks and the first pick in the rookie draft. So he's got the last pick. He's at the 14 picks. He traded rounds 3 and 4 plus the last pick of round 5 and the first pick of a rookie draft for pick 203, 312, and 511. Ooh, no, I don't like this.
He basically traded his 4th-round pick and the rookie 101 for 203.
Yeah, it's third pick. So that's the 17th overall pick in this league. Would you rather straight up have the 17th overall pick or rookie 101?
My 17th overall player is Miles Sanders.
DeAndre Swift was the 17th overall pick in our Dynasty startup.
I would
you
rather have
rather
DeAndre Swift in the 101.
Would you rather have Swift than the 101?
No. Because I
agree.
I love Travis Etienne, but could totally see someone disagreeing with that.
Would you rather have Swift than the 101 last year?
Probably not.
Yes, because Swift wasn't the 101 last year.
Well, I didn't really you're saying would I rather have Swift than at this time of year, I would rather have had probably Miles Sanders than the 101. And I compare Swift to Miles Sanders for obvious reasons.
Remember, you also gave up a fourth round pick too. So it's not
so what do we think?
101
You like
straight
this
up for
pick
the
or
second
no?
round pick. It's a fourth rounder too.
You like this trade?
I don't like the trade.
Okay. Okay, so this one is from Matt in Los Angeles. Joined an existing Dynasty league last year, fielded a decent team, but didn't play any defense. I have 5 IDP players because I wanted to have the upside of getting breakout players. So I finished in last place. I have the number 1 pick in the rookie draft. I have to drop 5 players. Who should I drop? Okay, who are the options here? Hurts, Tannehill, Tua, Daniel Jones, Rashad Penny, Zach Moss, Chenault, Debo, Marquise Brown, Jonnu Smith, Logan Thomas, Ravens, and Butker.
I am confused.
He has to drop 5 players.
He said he didn't play any defense, 5 IDP players, but also he has the Ravens.
I guess you have a DST and IDPs. So he didn't play any IDPs last year, but he's going to this year, so he needs to drop 5 players. Can you drop your kicker and defense? That's first place.
Of course you can.
He didn't play 5 IDP players last year. I think he can drop anybody he wants.
True. So do that, and then you need 3 more.
Yeah, you've got some tough cuts to make after that. Did he say if it was full PPR? Yes, he did. I think I would still drop Daniel Jones
For sure.
Rashad Penny, and I think I would cut Logan Thomas next. So the kicker, the defense, Jones, Penny, Logan Thomas. Everybody else has too much upside.
Man, I'd have a hard time cutting Logan Thomas and leaving Jonnu Smith as my only tight end.
So then who do you cut instead? Zach Moss?
Definitely Daniel Jones, the kicker, the defense, Rashad Penny.
The other options could be...
I think I'd cut Jonnu.
Laviska Shenault, Debo Samuel, Jonnu, and Logan Thomas.
I'll tell you what. Can you make the decision after Jonnu figures out where he's playing?
Like, I really like Jonnu's upside, but his upside is all entirely 100% theoretical.
Right, but Logan Thomas was a byproduct of a check down quarterback and a Washington offense that didn't have a whole lot of other pieces to it. I'm sure they're going to upgrade around him. Like, it's hard to get excited about Logan Thomas, especially in a dynasty league. He's an older player.
Yeah.
Okay,
like,
one of the tight ends.
For next year, he could be good. But
let Matt figure it out. Let's go to our next one from Francis in London. Hey, Roger, Novak, and Rafa.
Those are tennis players.
They are tennis players. Do you know their last names?
Federer.
Yeah.
Nadal.
Yeah, and Novak.
Djokovic or something like that?
Just Djokovic.
The
D is
sorry.
Joker.
Yeah. I have a solid team. I won the league. I'm looking to win now. My wide receivers are Michael Thomas, Calvin Ridley, Juju, Beckham, and Gabriel Davis. Do I take this trade? Give up Gabriel Davis and a 3rd round 2021 rookie pick for Julio Jones.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. This is from Steve. Where's Steve from?
Steve is from Boise, Idaho.
Second year of a 14-team Superflex league. It's half PPR. So it's Superflex, it's 14 teams, and you have to start 2 tight ends. I have 101, 104, 109, 201, 202, 203.
Yes.
For a team that drafted last year to be dominant in 2 to 3 years. So with my starting tight ends being Gesicki and Ian Thomas and only Foster Moreau on the bench, do you think it's worth drafting Kyle Pitts at 104?
Yes.
He won't be there at 109. Okay.
I hope he's there at 104.
two tight ends you have to start.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, he also says I could take Brevin Jordan or one of the other prospects in the second round.
Not smart enough to speak on any of the other prospects at tight end, but I do know that it's not a deep class. And I know that there's a chance that Pitts actually gets drafted and converted to a receiver. That's one thing that might make you a little bit nervous to take him in a 2 tight end league, but he's got so much athleticism. He seems like a great future player in the NFL.
Are you surprised that Brevin Jordan is not more highly thought of? Because he was the number 1 tight end recruit in the country, and I always thought he was a spectacular player. He went to Miami, so Dave and I watched every game he's played. I think he's tremendous, but he's not really, I mean, he's like potentially a day 3 pick, and that's not someone you want to bank on as a starting tight end. So I don't know. I'm surprised. I'm interested to see where he ends up. He's been very injured, but this, again, number 1 recruit in the tight end recruit in the country, and he's been awesome when he's played. So I don't know, Dave. I was surprised that he hasn't been ranked higher. Maybe that's a topic for a different show. You know what? We're going to have an NFL draft series on FFT and 5 launching next week, and we'll tell you more about that and get into these prospects. Colin Snyder has a question. Should I keep Jared Goff or Derek Carr in a dynasty league?
Carr.
I think I have Carr. Yeah, just barely. I mean, it's a push. They go back and forth every time I update the quarterback rankings.
All right. Our last email is from Brandon. Dear Bill, Hank, Dale, and Boomhauer. Brandon in Newfoundland. Longtime listener of the show, and you've helped me win multiple titles in our Dynasty League.
Nice.
12-team, 1 quarterback, half PPR, 1 flex. So he needs a quarterback. He has Trubisky as his quarterback. I do not have a pick until the 3rd round since I went for the championship last season. I am ready and willing to move on from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He also has Akers and Dobbins and Melvin Gordon and Jeff Wilson. Who are some of the quarterbacks you would target for Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I have been offered Raheem Mostert and the 102 pick in this year's rookie class. If I do that deal to give up Edwards-Helaire for Mostert and the 2nd pick of the rookie draft, would you take a position player or a quarterback?
I would probably take a position player.
I would, but I don't know, like, what's the point of doing that trade, really? Like, you've got J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, Chris Godwin, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Joe Mixon.
Oh, he has Mixon. I'm sorry. I missed that one.
You need to go get a quarterback to win the damn league.
Could you make the trade for 102 and then move down? Maybe get 110 and a future first, and then he can take one of the quarterbacks at 110.
But that's not going to help him this year.
If the quarterback is Lawrence and possibly Zach Wilson,
it's not going to be Lawrence at 110. I wouldn't think.
Probably not. I doubt it. But he moves back to 105. And
wouldn't all of you take the 2nd pick in the draft plus Mostert for Clyde Edwards-Helaire at this point? All 2 of you?
I think I would.
Oh, I would take the 2nd pick in the draft for Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Right.
I don't even need Mostert.
So do the trade.
I'd love to have him.
Do the trade and you know, regardless of what position you can address quarterback in a separate trade, but do that trade.
Could he do that trade and then deal off Mixon for a 1st round pick in the draft, and then you'd use that pick to get Lawrence?
Can you just trade the number 2 for Lamar Jackson?
Probably.
You could do that, but then okay. So now I'm trading Edwards-Helaire basically for a stud quarterback.
See, I don't think you can trade.
Quarterback layout is in the league.
I don't think you can trade Clyde for Lamar Jackson, but I think you could trade the number 2 for Lamar Jackson.
Depends on who's got Lamar Jackson and what his quarterback situation is.
Okay,
running back situation is.
CBS Sports tight end rankings, by the way. Kyle Pitts, 9th overall. Guy from Penn State, Pat Fryermuth. No idea how to pronounce that. 24th overall. Brevin Jordan, 46th overall. So if that's the case, then Jordan will have some appeal. But I'm seeing a lot of different things on him. All right, that's it for today's show. It was a long one, just like your Dynasty Leagues. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. And we will talk to you next week, unless there's some breaking news over the weekend. You know, we'll always have those bonus pods for you. Thanks to Dave and Heath and Ben Schrager. I'm Adam Azer. Have a good weekend, everybody. See ya.
Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.